Well guys, welcome back to the shop. I'm Chris with M7 Metalworks. Today we're going to work a little bit on our front axle. Now I admit I have done quite a bit of work already off camera, and sometimes it's just hard videotaping everything. You want to get some progress done. I thought, man, I haven't seen anything like this on the internet, at least on YouTube. And so I thought I probably ought to document some of this. So I think what we'll do is we'll record the reassembly. Basically all I've done is unbolt things and pull stuff off. I've pulled the steering knuckles off, tie rod, tube, all that kind of stuff. So I think now what we'll do is we'll replace some bearings, some seals. I've got a couple bearings, one here and one on the other side of the axle that I need to pop out and pop in some new ones, press in a couple new bearings. I've cleaned everything up already. I'll take you over to the bench and we'll take a look at that. So if you're into trying to fix your front axle on your Super 55 or your 550 Oliver, then this is probably the video for you, or at least one of them. So I'll try to do my best to kind of document this. So you see all the parts laid out here, guys. One of the hubs is missing because I've got it over on the press. I'm getting ready to press in a seal, and I'll show you that when I do that. But I went ahead and cleaned everything up to include the inside of these hubs. I didn't get crazy spotless, but I got a lot of the old grease out, and it's a little bit shiny in there because I cleaned it in diesel fluid. So the other hub, I actually put new races in and I got new bearings for. This hub was fine. The races and the bearings were good. But the other hub, they were a little bit worn. They're just pretty loose. So got new bearings right here for that. And then on this is what they call a wear shield or wear plate. I made this one. This is essentially the ring from the other wear shield, which I've got here, and I essentially just this one hasn't been pressed on, I've just kind of popped it on there. But the other one this one was worn so badly that I ended up getting a washer, the correct size inner diameter and exterior or outer diameter from McMaster Car, and I just welded that on. So you can see this part doesn't truly matter. It just needs to be able to fit inside the hub, inside this section, because one of these seals will go in there, and then the bearing goes in there, and then this all gets pressed up against that. So this one has some wear on it, but it wasn't horrific. My other one actually had holes worn right through it. So this one here, I'll just pop that on, and I think we're going to use this one just as it is, because realistically what I'll be doing with it, I'll probably never wear that one out. So let's go over to the press. All right, just to get the final seating down, I just take a little punch and just kind of hit it on the edge here, and it'll kind of get that seal right down, seated right up against the plate. By putting the old seal on, that gets it in there pretty much, but it doesn't get it fully seated because it gets flush. So it just needs to go a hair bit lower. All right, guys. So we're looking at the spindle here, front spindle. So there's our axle. So right under here, it's what the book calls a thrust bearing. I'm gonna put a little light on it, see if I can't give you a little better view. All right, so there's our thrust bearing. And then you go a little deeper up in there and you can see a little brass There's the brass bushing. So I've got kind of an angled punch, angled chisel. I think I'm going to get it hooked right there on that part of the bearing, and I'm going to try to punch it out. I could also use the type that goes up in here and expands, and then you got a little hammer type deal on it. But I actually think this will punch that out a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. So we're going to try it. Side here. See if I'm moving it any. Oh yeah. You can see it right there. Yeah. Yeah, not in such great condition. I mean, not terrible, but all right, so there's that bearing. Pay attention when you pull your bearings out. So this here is the cage that my bearings rode in, and it stayed in the socket. So you do have to get that out. You can see it kind of butts right up to the bushing, but these things aren't in there very hard. So you might get a screwdriver or something to pry right underneath it, and then pluck it out. What I'm doing, I've just caved in on the sides. That weakens that thing. And then you can see I can already move it. So there's your bearing case. The cage the bearing sits in. All right, guys, so I had to build this axle up some. So this is on the left side of the tractor as you're sitting on it, and it was missing. Well, let me just show you. Okay, that's what it should look like. So that's kind of same thickness there. Mine was all boogered up. So he had hit something, the previous owner had hit something and kind of done a lot of damage right through here, but even had some damage here and here on the fronts and back. So I went ahead and just took the welder. I didn't do it on camera, I just did it off camera just to get it done, get it fixed. But all I've done is just build that up. It's probably stronger than the original now at this point. So now I think what we'll do is we'll clean this up with some acetone. That way it'll take my sealant, and I'm going to put some sealant in on this. It'll hold it in real well, for one, and it'll shore up any little areas, because all I've done on the inside of these welds was take a die grinder on the inside to kind of get that shape. My bearing will sink down in it. I did get some new old stock bearings, Timken T126, and so they should be really nice. So here's one of those Timken's T126. That's the same bearing I pulled out of there. Now you can see the bearings inside are quite a bit larger than the other ones that I bought. So this is the modern replacement bearing for that. And you know, I'm not 100% sure where this is made. It's a BC 1711 NWB 2260. So I don't know what NWB is. I'm assuming that's the manufacturing name. You can see the bearings in here considerably smaller. Though it looks as stoutly made, it does look pretty well made. So here's the back side on both. There's the top side on both. So we're going to use the originals just because we've got them. And then these are going to go on the shelf, and if I ever need to replace, I'll replace with these. So let's get these pressed in. Let's go ahead and get the axle put back together. Now that we've got those bearings pressed in, I did want to show you while we're looking at this, I wanted to show you Clint's buddy of mine, and he's got his Super 55 here. Got to do some work on it. As you can see, it's leaking. I'm going to bet that's a rear main seal. That's not on the list to repair, so I'm probably going to have to give him a call. But we're going to replace his brake disc, brake shaft seal, as well as O-ring. We're also going to replace all the PTO seals on there and get his PTO clutch pack new, make it new again. And then we're going to check his engine clutch, his pressure plate and throw out bearing and pilot bearing and all that stuff, and rear main seal now, since it definitely looks like it's leaking. That could be coming from the rear end and just going forward and dropping there, but it looks like engine oil to me. So just wanted to show you that. I'll go ahead and put you on the stand here, and let's get this axle. Let's start putting this thing back together. You can see everything's, as I showed previously, everything's been cleaned up. I got those seals in there, the wear plate. One wear plate I made, one is the original with some wear on it, but I think it'll be fine. So let's get cracking on that. All right, guys, this is all the parts for the right side of the tractor. So you can see it's quite a bit. You got a new tie rod in there, new bearings, handful of new parts. Got a new felt seal that'll go on the steering arm. So let's put her back together. The big thing is going to be greasing this. That hub had about a half a pound of grease in it. It was full. We'll just put a little bit of anise on there. Where's that? There's a flat, 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 and a flat. So it's got 4 flats on this, and they correspond to the indentations there. So it's splined. Mine already had that mark. So I made a little mark there and a little mark down there. So essentially that allows me to know the orientation of this. So, and it should really only go on one way. There we go. Alrighty, we'll snug that up later. We've got the top half of this axle steering mechanism put together. So we've got the steering knuckle here, as well as the tie rod, and it going all the way to the steering box. So now what we need to do, we need to put the hub in. It's got two bearings, one on the back and then one in the front, the very front. And this axle hub or wheel hub, it's got a lot of space in there, so it's going to take a ton of grease to fill that thing up. So I think what I'll do is I'll pack the bearings. I've cleaned the old bearings. In this case, this side, the bearings were perfectly fine. I didn't see any need to replace them. On the other side, I had to replace them. There are grease bearing packers out there that you can buy, but I don't think they do a better job than your hand. Start seeing some grease squeeze out, and of course then I'll know got her fully packed. All right guys, so I've been pumping grease into the grease zerk here for what seems like 30 minutes just to fill that hub up, but you can see now it's starting to squeeze out of that bearing in the front. So now we know we've got the hub full of grease so that when I do put 1 or 2 squeezes of the grease later on down the line, I'm not just filling the hub up for the first 1.5 years. I'm actually getting grease to the bearings. So now we'll go ahead and tighten this nut up, and we'll put the cap on, and we'll leave it at that. We won't put the wheel hub on yet because I've still got to do some sandblasting and painting on that. All right, guys, well, we've got both wheel hubs back on. Got the steering linkage and everything back together as well. I did get new tie rod in, so let's just kind of recap here just a little bit of what we've done. So we pulled these off, replaced that felt seal on both sides. We've put it back on. I've cleaned everything, of course. Some of the stuff is new, like this tie rod tube is new. But everything else I wire wheeled, same with this. So I've put some grease in here and put that on. Of course, replaced the tie rod tube, new tie rod ends. I've used anti-seize on all those joints. We've went ahead and cleaned out the spindle here and lubed everything. Had to reinforce this neck here where that bearing is housed, and so once we get that sanded and painted, I don't know that anyone will notice too much. Of course, we got the hubs cleaned and greased. New bearings on this side, old bearings on this side. Got some cleanup to do. Obviously, I'll have to power wash the whole thing and do a bunch of wire wheeling and sandblasting. A buddy of mine's let me use his sandblaster, so I'll sandblast some stuff as well. I did not put the power steering cylinders on here for one main reason. I'm going to paint it, and they'll just make it difficult for me to paint back behind on the engine side of things. So that's the front end steering linkage and front wheel hub bearings. That's cleaning, replacing, doing all that kind of stuff. Again, we didn't show the disassembly, but because of that, I went ahead and showed the reassembly. I did preload these bearings, and that just simply means that I tightened up the nut that holds that hub on while I kept rotating the hub. And then I'd loosen up, retighten, loosen up, retighten, just trying to get them to seat in there real well, and then take enough tension off to where I can rotate those hubs relatively easy. They don't just spin, but there'll be a little bit of wear in and break in as well, because I do have new seals on the back side of here. So anyways, guys, I think we'll end this video here. I hope that it will be of help to some of you when tackling your front end on your 550 or your Super 55. I'm Chris with M7 Metalworks. Have a good day.